Elvis Presley's enduring fame is based on his success on records and his performances on stage. And yet, he spent almost 10 years of his life here in Hollywood. He made more than 30 Elvis movies. But it's as if he passed through this town without leaving a trace. He should have owned it. For it turned out that Elvis's years in Hollywood and his movies, instead of being his most shining moments, were his most frustrating. Bill Campbell was cast in Elvis's first film, Love Me Tender.
The first day that we shot, every executive's wife, every executive's grandchild, every executive's grandmother came en masse, the special passes. And he had something that I recognize more now than I did then. I didn't really understand his power until I saw the bubble gum card and saw my face pasted all over these bubble gum cards, because, you know, in those days, you really made it when you hit the bubble gum cards. I mean, that was really something. Only movie stars and baseball players could get into those.
Hal Cantor directed Elvis in his first starring role, Loving You.
And one day I ran into Hal Wallace, for whom I had done a number of pictures, and he said, I'd like you to come over to the studio and look at a screen test I made of somebody. I said, who was it? He said, Elvis Presley. I said, come on, you've got to be kidding. He said, just come and see the screen test. And I went over the following day, sat alone in the projection room, and watched about 15 minutes of film that the man had done, in which he did a scene from The Rainmaker, or one of Hal's previous pictures, and he just astonished me. He was so good. I think he had tremendous natural ability. He was also very observant. One of the things he said to me, without reading the script, and this is the first evening we were there, he said, do I have to smile much in the picture? And I said, what do you mean smile? He said, well, does it call for me to smile? I said, well, just offhand, Elvis, I can't recall where it says in the script he smiles. That all comes out of the scene when we stage it, when we start working. Why do you ask a question like that? He said, well, I've been studying the films of some big stars. I've been looking at Jimmy Dean, whom he worshipped, and Marlon Brando, and Humphrey Bogart. He says, and I noticed that they never smile. He said, and that's what makes women excited, the fact that they never smile. And I don't want to smile if I don't have to. He said, because if you save your smiles, then when you do smile, you really got them.
But as successful as Elvis's films were, something was wrong. Film critics David Ehrenstein and Bill Reed explained.
He was involved in movies that were tailor-made for him specifically in order to promote the songs.
He was very, very ashamed of the kind of films he was turning out. And I would even go so far as to say that every time he finished a film, he fled Hollywood. And the usual explanation of that was because he loved to be back home in Graceland. I wouldn't be the least bit surprised if the real reason wasn't that he was ashamed to look anyone in the eye.
Music industry figure Jerry Schilling was an old friend of Elvis's, his stand-in, and a member of the Memphis Mafia.
We know the early Elvis was the rebellious Elvis. But then when you look at the movies that he made out here, he wasn't rebellious at all in most of them. In fact, they were pap.
When Elvis came to Hollywood, the idea was he's going to sell whatever it is. So why pay for a script? Why pay for a co-star? You know, let's put Elvis in there, and also let's put some music in there, and we can sell both, and we only have to spend $1 million or $2 million, whatever the budgets were at that time. Elvis knew that, and it broke his heart. And he would, a lot of times, he would get physically sick. See, Wild in the Country was one of the last, you know, the last chances. You look at the early stuff, you see the raw talent there. And it became, doing so many of those movies, when Elvis walked on the stage, he wasn't an actor, he was playing Elvis Presley.
Philip Dunn directed Elvis in Wild in the Country.
From a critical point of view, how was Wild in the Country?
When we previewed, every card said, cut out the songs. Audiences at previews began to laugh every time he sat down and gave tongue. And still, you couldn't shake the brass. You know, they were completely hidebound in their thinking.
fear that a Presley movie without music wouldn't work.
Yes, it just wouldn't work. The music was Presley, and Presley was music. What they didn't know was that Presley was a first-class dramatic actor.
You're saying that if he had done that, if he had been more involved in work that he really cared for, that he would be alive today?
I'm not God, and it's hard to answer that question, but if he would have been able to take the tour to Europe that he wanted to do so badly, if he could have done this project, if he could have had his life kept interested, yes. But everything that came from his idea that he wanted to do, somehow they were blown away by somebody. But he knew down in his heart that this is not, he had more to give.
You can't really say that Elvis's movies weren't successful. After all, those formula movies did make money at a time when money-making movies were hard to come by in Hollywood. But it's a sad thing to consider that we never found out whether Elvis would develop as an actor, as an artist. And even sadder than that was that Elvis never found out.